So I was browsing one of China's biggest travel apps yesterday, just, taking a look at the market trends.
Okay.
And usually the interface is absolutely screaming with ads for Japan Kyoto's autumn leaves, shopping sprees in Ginza, Universal Studios Osaka.
Right. It's the #1 destination for Chinese tourists.
By a long shot, over 7 million people have flown there just in the first 9 months of this year. The demand is usually so high it feels explosive.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to the search bar and typed in Tokyo, something strange happened.
What happened?
The screen just came up blank. I thought it was a glitch, so I typed Japan. Still nothing.
Wow.
No error message, no sold-out banners, just a complete digital void. It was as if the entire country had been quietly wiped off the map in the blink of an eye.
That's incredible.
So I reached out to a contact I have at a major state-owned travel agency to ask, what was going on. I was expecting to hear about a server crash or something.
But that wasn't it.
No. The mood was incredibly tense. He didn't talk about technical issues. He talked about a total freeze. He told me that as of the 16th, they weren't just stopping new sales.
They were doing refunds.
Full refunds for trips that were already paid for and ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a surreal realization. You have this massive, booming economic engine and industry driving billions in revenue that just hit a brick wall overnight.
And not because of a natural disaster or a pandemic.
Exactly. It was a political switch being flipped. And that instant shift from these record-breaking tourism numbers to a total sales blackout, it really forces you to look at just how fragile the connection between these two economic giants actually is.
That speed, that instant translation of political tension into an economic blackout is just stunning.
It is.
I mean, you're witnessing a real-time, large-scale example of diplomatic conflict instantly becoming economic coercion. That fragility you mentioned, that's really the core of this deep dive.
Right.
Our mission is to analyze the fallout, the sharp economic pain being felt across Japan, the strategic playbook China employs to weaponize its massive consumer base, and the extreme operational contortions that Chinese businesses must perform just to survive in this kind of high-risk environment.
Let's start with those economic shockwaves hitting Japan. The whole scenario was triggered by political remarks, specifically those from Prime Minister Takaichi in Parliament about Taiwan. But the devastation isn't abstract, is it? It is immediate and intensely local.
It's the brutal reality of relying on a politically volatile market. Japan had been breaking records. The 7.48 million Chinese visitors between January and September of 2025.
They were the largest source of foreign tourists.
By far. Easily surpassing South Korea. We're talking about an industry that was projected to generate well over $20 billion in revenue this year alone, relying heavily on that flow.
So when you flip that switch,
you don't just lose potential sales, you shatter an entire ecosystem of hotels, transport providers, restaurants, retailers, the whole thing.
And we saw the weight of that shock captured in the story of Kenji, a third-generation owner of a traditional ryokan in Kyoto.
Right.
I mean, like so many Japanese business owners, he had made a major capital expenditure, a massive bet on the stability of this relationship.
He'd invested heavily, using loans to fund renovations, adding larger family suites, for example, optimized for those multi-generational Chinese tour groups. He even hired specialized Mandarin-speaking staff.
All based on the assumption that the post-pandemic surge would just keep going.
He was at peak readiness for the high season.
And then overnight, that entire gamble just evaporated.
Absolutely. The data arrived from his Shanghai partner agency as a batch cancellation update. It just zeroed out almost all of his forward bookings.
He didn't just lose revenue, he lost 60% of his projected revenue. Instantly.
And he's left holding the bag. He's got loans for renovations, staff he can no longer afford, and zero demand from his primary target market.
Kenji's situation perfectly illustrates the core economic vulnerability here, doesn't it? It's not just a geopolitical problem, it's a structural one.
It is.
Relying so disproportionately on a single politically directed market is not just a risk, it's a critical strategic failure just waiting to happen.
And this raises a crucial question about mitigation. The political friction is immediate, but the solution diversification is glacially slow.
So while it's the urgent survival strategy for Japan's whole tourism sector, you have to ask, how feasible is it right now?
Exactly. Kenji needs money this quarter, but ramping up marketing and flight capacity from new regions takes years. For diversification to be meaningful, Japan needs to rapidly pivot its marketing and incentive structures toward markets that are, less politically sensitive to Beijing.
So you're talking about places like India, Western Europe, the US.
Exactly. That's the right strategy for long-term resilience, but it requires a fundamental shift in infrastructure, visa processing, marketing focus. It's a huge undertaking.
And it takes time that many small businesses like Kenji's Ryokan, they simply don't have.
No, they are paying the price right now for a diplomatic decision made at the highest level.
The scale of that pain is what's so stunning. It shows how profoundly effective Beijing's strategy is. But that begs the question, how is compliance enforced so completely across millions of travelers and thousands of businesses in China?
Well, you can't just rely on citizens spontaneously deciding to cancel their vacation plans.
Right.
The key is what we call dual mobilization. This is the party state's systematic and highly sophisticated way of achieving foreign policy goals using economic tools.
And that works on two tracks.
Simultaneously, on two deeply interlocked tracks to ensure total nationwide compliance.
So let's start with the hard rules, the coercive mechanism. That's the direct hammer of the state.
That is hard mobilization. This involves non-public, often verbal state orders transmitted immediately down the chain of command.
Okay.
So in this case, major state-owned and private travel agencies in Beijing received the directive to stop all new sales and process immediate refunds for existing Japan trips.
And these agencies are crucial.
They're the intermediary actors. They control the supply chain, the tours, the flights, the hotel blocks. Their compliance is mandatory because their operating licenses are entirely dependent on the state.
So if they don't comply...
Immediate fines, or worse, license revocation.
So the state targets the commercial gatekeepers first. That way, the infrastructure for travel collapses instantly.
Precisely. And this is often reinforced by administrative controls. If the government wants to restrict outbound flow even further, they might tighten passport restrictions.
Citing what?
Oh, vague internal needs like no emergency, no going abroad. It just adds another layer of control, making it hard for independent travelers to even get the documents they need.
And then, parallel to that, you have the soft mobilization.
Yeah?
This is about shaping public opinion so citizens voluntarily agree with the policy.
Or at least feel uneasy about traveling, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is where media persuasion comes in. The goal is to make travel to the target country ideologically or, personally unpalatable.
How do they do that?
The state-controlled media uses strategic framing and priming. They might resurface historical grievances, maybe the bitter memory of World War II, or past territorial disputes like the Diaoyu Senkaku Islands.
So they're activating nationalistic sentiment, making citizens feel like traveling to Japan undermines the national interest.
Exactly. Or, and this is very effective, they focus on personal interest reporting. Suddenly, they flood the news cycle with reports of tourists being mistreated or overcharged, or minor safety incidents in Tokyo.
It activates public resentment and fear.
And that discourages prospective travelers and creates self-censorship among those who might otherwise want to book independently.
This really highlights the human cost, doesn't it? The story of Li, the Shanghai graphic designer, she really put a face on this policy. Her saved-up dream trip just dissolved the minute the ban was triggered.
Li felt completely disempowered. She described feeling less like a consumer with purchasing power and more like a poker chip in a high-stakes diplomatic game.
All her personal desire, her savings, her carefully planned itinerary.
All sacrificed instantly to send a political message to Tokyo. The government is using the aggregate of individual dreams as diplomatic leverage.
Which raises an important question. Is this tactic new, this use of tourism as a political lever?
Not at all. It's a tested, effective, and recurring component of China's assertive foreign policy. We've seen this playbook deployed repeatedly over the last decade.
Like in 2012?
Exactly. Yeah. Think back to 2012 during the Diaoyu Islands dispute with Japan, or the similar dispute with the Philippines over the Huangyan Island.
And I think maybe the most impactful recent example was the PM missile defense crisis with South Korea.
Precisely. The T crisis from 2016 to 2017 was an almost perfect parallel, but maybe even on a larger scale, targeting a specific company.
Right.
China suspended tourism to South Korea to pressure Seoul over the missile system installation. The resulting economic pain was immense, and importantly, it wasn't just generalized. Companies seen as facilitating it, like the Lotte Group, were directly targeted.
Their stores in China face closures and intense commercial pressure.
Right. It demonstrates that the state can rapidly shift economic pain from a whole country down to individual corporate entities to achieve compliance.
So, if the government has this robust playbook, what does this all mean for the travel agencies that are caught in the middle? They're sandwiched between rigid political directives and massive revenue targets.
It creates an almost existential operational environment. I mean, consider Mr. Zhang, the senior manager at the state-owned travel agency we heard about. The moment that oral directive came down on the 16th, Japan, their cash cow, their biggest revenue generator, was just erased.
The logistics must have been completely chaotic. His team suddenly had two competing and immediate priorities: compliance and survival.
Exactly. Compliance meant immediately scrubbing every keyword. We're talking about thousands of pages in search results where Tokyo or Kyoto instantly became this digital void.
But survival meant scrambling to process a massive influx of cancellation refunds. That's a huge drain on cash flow.
A huge drain.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you're trying to salvage the entire quarterly sales target.
I have to imagine Mr. Zhang didn't just stand still. This can't have been the first crisis. They must have a plan.
He immediately implemented Plan B, a sort of grim proficiency they developed from surviving past crises like the South Korea ban.
Okay, so what is Plan B?
The immediate strategy was to repurpose the large financial capital and intensive marketing energy from the now defunct Japan budget toward friendlier, politically acceptable jurisdictions.
So they weren't just canceling, they were forcefully shifting consumer flow to keep their business afloat.
They moved with extraordinary speed. The redirection strategy involved aggressively subsidizing discounts and pushing packages for alternatives.
Destinations like Thailand and Singapore.
They became immediate targets, places known for easy visa processing and high consumer appetite. Crucially, they also promoted domestic alternatives, specifically red tourism routes.
Tell us more about red tourism. For a lot of listeners, this might sound like a niche product, but strategically, it seems far more significant here.
It is. Red tourism is a strategic redirection of capital towards sites of Communist Party significance, historic battlefields, memorial halls, or birthplaces of revolutionary leaders.
And it serves a dual purpose.
That's right. On the one hand, it's about ideological alignment and reinforcement. On the other, it's a form of domestic economic stimulation.
So by pushing millions of travelers toward these sites, the state effectively plugs the revenue hole created by the international ban.
And it ensures that Chinese capital continues to flow through domestic hotels, airlines, and local tourist services.
So they're protecting the travel agency's cash flow by forcing consumers to spend their money domestically, all while reinforcing the party's historical narrative. It's a pretty elegant solution to a massive political risk.
It shows extreme adaptability in an environment where political risk is the single biggest operational variable. These agencies are highly pragmatic.
So they abide by the state's red line.
The ban, yes, but they immediately seek out policy-acceptable alternatives to maintain profitability and survive. They treat the market like a controlled current, instantly redirecting the flow when the state shifts the dam.
You know, this entire deep dive, it seems the instant digital void over Japan exposed two profound realities. First, the painful economic vulnerability of destinations that rely too heavily on the massive state-directed Chinese tourism market. And second, the sophisticated dual-layer strategy China uses hard decrees combined with soft media persuasion to instantly enforce its foreign policy goals.
It fundamentally illustrates China's approach to foreign policy leverage. They aren't relying solely on traditional diplomacy. They are utilizing their immense economic and consumer scale to achieve diplomatic ends.
Which means domestic actors, from major travel agencies to individual citizens like Li,
become instrumental, whether they consent to it or not, in the implementation of the state's foreign policy agenda.
The sheer scale of China's outbound tourism market makes it one of the most powerful soft power tools in the world. Yet the moment it's converted into a weapon, it reveals an extraordinary capacity for an authoritarian state to prioritize diplomatic leverage over the stability of its own major commercial industries and over the personal freedoms of its citizens.